Sister, one of the questions I have is in regards to the word bitterness. I am aware that in many verses of the Bible it speaks about the word bitterness, and if we search the dictionary, the word bitterness represents a deep sadness, or a sadness that lasts for a long time. My question, sister, is in Hebrews 12:15, where it speaks regarding the root of bitterness. In a Bible study, I'm not sure if I am mistaken, it was said that the root of bitterness are the secret sins. I'm not sure, sister, if you may...
Hebrews what, brother?
Hebrews 12, verse 15.
12:15, which says, it reads, 14, pursue peace with all people and holiness, without which, meaning that without holiness, no one will see the Lord, looking carefully lest anyone fall short of the grace of God, lest any root of bitterness springing up cause trouble, and by this many become defiled. But this root of bitterness here it's like the conscience. Now, bitterness is deep sadness that's constant. A person can have deep sadness every day, because of something that they have gone through in their life, so they feel that way and they call it bitterness. Because sometimes someone can be sad, but it's momentary. For that moment, maybe, they're sad for a moment, for a couple of hours, they were sad for a day, but bitterness is constant. So this is why it's this constant sadness, and the Bible calls it here in the vocabulary here, bitterness. And in Hebrews, where it says that lest anyone have any root of bitterness, it's because there were people who had this constant sadness because their conscience of the sins that they committed, and those sins, their conscience is constantly accusing them. And that person can't free themselves from that, but they sort of live that all of the time. And that is why he says, do not keep that root in your conscience anymore. The longing to do those things that produce unhappiness in your life, there are sins that produce unhappiness in people. And that is what this was talking about, a sin. Like there was a root there, something still remaining, and that you should not go and relive that and go back to that again after you've changed and converted and God forgives you and you start to live a new life in the Lord. And maybe still this person still has this tendency to try and fall back into those wicked things. So this is why he was speaking of a root of bitterness. But the terminology here of bitterness is that it's constant sadness. I'm sure maybe someone lives sad about something in their life, and that sadness is constant. And when they come to church, the Lord tells them, you have been sad for things that have happened in your infancy, in your childhood. There are things that fill a person with trauma and emotional complexes, and it's sadness that are there and constant in that person's life. So that's when God comes in and takes action and removes all of those things and takes away those emotional complexes and traumas, because that is what produces that constant sadness in their conscience and does not allow the person to be happy or be free. That's what the root of bitterness means. But here also the root of bitterness had to deal with a sin a person committed, but they wanted to continue on in that. And that sin also produces sadness and bitterness because your conscience is telling you, why have you stolen something from that person? And you say, okay, well, I'm repentant, but how can I remove this? I hurt that person. I shouldn't have done that. So it produces this in their heart, this constant feeling of sadness and lament, and that's what you then call bitterness. And maybe today it's not called that. Maybe you can call it an emotional complex or a trauma. Maybe you can call it that. Very well.